Every now and then, a movie comes along that truly changes how we see the world, or shows us something about the world we had never quite seen before. Julií Taymorovou's latest movie is FRIDA, about the Mexican artist Frida Kahlo and Diego Rivera, played by Selma Hayek and Alfred Molina. Taymorovou was fascinated with how the young Frida, hardly known in her time, could become an icon of modern art, and with how any lover copes with the pain of betrayal.
Yeah, it's fine. And there's a lot of tension until that point. So everybody, and then she sits down, just watching.
Once again, her directing draws upon an artistic imagination unlike any other. And Julií Taymorovou joins me now to talk about what she sees that others don't. How do you keep in touch with your artistic self in this commercialized world?
Well, I don't know how to answer that exactly, but I think that I can only do what I do feel passionate about, or what moves me, or what daunts me. I really like to be challenged. I like to go into something not knowing if I can pull it off. I'm not really interested in safety. When I did FRIDA, it was so different from Titus and The Lion King and all my other pieces because it was supposedly a reality, a biography. And now all of a sudden I have to pay attention to cars of a period and buttons and lamps and truth, whatever that means. There's no such thing, but some semblance of truth.
You don't believe there's so?
No, because I think the truth is, as Frida would say, it could be behind the eyes. What we call truth, or reality, or literal reality, it's just an exterior reality, but it's really in the eyes of the beholder. It's subjective.
I ain't moving, idiot!
What was there about the life of this woman that made you want to tell her story?
Well, her life seemed to transcend her pain. This is a woman who shouldn't have lived after this horrific accident that skewered her. And yet she was in bed for 2 years. Her father put a mirror under the canopy of the bed, and she started to paint herself. And through her life, she seemed to be able to create art out of the worst circumstances, and that's an incredibly inspiring story. On top of that, it's an amazing romance, the rockiest romance I have ever come across, ever, between her and Diego Rivera.
The most unlikely.
Oh, it's unbelievable. He was 250, 300 pounds. She was 5'2". Their differences were huge. He was a very famous painter at the time, hugely famous, and phenomenally famous for womanizing. Mm-hmm. And she knew it when she married him. So you had infidelities all over the place, and yet this woman loved Diego, and it was a tremendous relationship. Divorce, come together, fall apart.
She was a revolutionary in so many ways, artistically, politically, sexually. What did you identify with her as a woman?
Well, this woman painted, not to make money, not that I haven't made money, but she painted what she painted because she had to, because she was passionate about it. She didn't care at all if people bought her paintings. As she said, she painted her reality. I find that I make, as an artist, the kinds of choices that I have to be impassioned about. I'm not going to spend 2 years on a film or 4 years on an opera if I don't feel like I can put my own self into it. It doesn't mean it has to be about myself. That's a difference. Frida painted her own reality, her life. I'm a director and I paint many other people's realities, but I do have to invest in it. And the other thing that I found compelling is that Elliot Goldenthal, who did the score, we have a long 20-year collaboration. And I love that Diego and Frida were these incredible artists who supported each other in their work, in their art.
He is your significant other,
oh,
isn't
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
For 20 years?
20 happily unmarried years. Yes.
So there was more to her than being an artist. I mean, there was a you could identify with that.
No, I like that. But she also really wanted to have a family and children, and she had no luck at that either, with miscarriages, and because of her accident, her body was not capable.
She could easily have been a victim. Yet, as I said in the opening, in the 1980s, there was this explosion of interest in her. Why do so many women see in her the hero's journey?
Well, I think there's a difference between how she was perceived in the 80s than how we're trying to deal with her now. Because she was used as whatever the word feminist means to you, she was used as an icon of pain and suffering. Really a woman who had tremendous abuse from her husband and survived, as I said, these accidents. But I don't think that really is the heart of what FRIDA is. I think now what we can see as women is a woman who was outrageous, unique, talented, single-minded, tenacious, very feminine, very caught up with her man, very vulnerable, very obsessive about her love for her guy. So there is this incredible balance that is attractive to women and to men, I think, who see this story, of someone who could do both, where you didn't have to say, I'm a woman, so I'm going to be independent and I don't need you as a male and I can stand on my own. And there's that. I mean, that's fine. But I also think with FRIDA, she knew how to lay a table. She knew how to put flowers in her hair. But what's mysterious about her is her gender bending, her bisexuality, her ability to be both macabre, grotesque, and exquisitely beautiful.
Let me show the audience one of the most of many powerful scenes in the movie.
Parrandera, si tus caricias han de ser mías, de nadie más. Y aunque te amo con locura, ya no.
Out! Go!
Paloma negra, eres la reja de un penar. Quiero ser libre, vivir mi vida con quien yo quiera. Dios, dame fuerza, que me estoy muriendo por irla a buscar.
I'm chilled every time I see that.
Why?
I do not know. I was going to ask you why. I mean, why is the hair cutting so significant?
Well, that particular scene happens after Diego has done the ultimate act of betrayal. He's made love with FRIDA's sister, and she leaves him. FRIDA leaves him, and so much of FRIDA was about her physicality, her hair, her braids, her clothes. So she cuts her hair off, and she puts on her male suit, and she plays with that other side of her, which is the masculine side of her. But that particular shot, which is Salma Hayek in front of the mirror, Salma Hayek completely painted. We painted her face, we painted her clothing, we forced perspective. When you talk about the theater, that is a forced perspective set. There's nothing computer generated in this at all. This is almost totally theatrical. You use motion control, which means your camera moves once with the real Salma here, then you do the same action again with there, and you can then put them together. But it's so shocking to people because it looks like a two-dimensional painting for a moment, and then you feel that it's a human being coming alive.
I'm chilled, I think, because of that. I'm chilled because suddenly as you talk, I think of, I'm seeing the melancholy. I mean, feeling the melancholy, the cut hair, the something lost, something gone, something that she loved, she shears. Yeah. And then suddenly this figure comes alive for a brief moment and then lapses into the utmost posture of despair and melancholy.
And it's a little gesture. I was talking about this earlier today. That's a little teeny gesture, just the collapse. Yeah. It's so subtle just to go, oh my God, she's alive, you know?
So let's look at that scene when, for the first time, Diego is about to seduce her, or she's about to seduce him.
Exactly.
Exactly.
What is this? Your studio?
One of the benefits of being party leader, you can arrange for the drinking to be done close to home.
If you think I'm going to sleep with you just because you've taken me under your wing, you're wrong.
Me? I was painting murals and womanizing in peace when you came along. I have a proposal. We will not sleep together. We will solemnly swear, right here, right now, that we will be friends only.
Fine. Did you arrange for that?
Cost me a fortune.
I wasn't prepared for the light to come on. I love that. That was quite a touch.
Yeah, yeah. All these things are part of the stories of Frida Kahlo and Diego Rivera.
Later, they do marry. She takes him on knowing that he is a compulsive womanizer. Why did she do that? You studied her life. Why did she do that?
She just thought he was worth it. She just thought it was bigger than that. Also, we have a scene, and I think it's the crux of the movie, really, which is what is the fine line between fidelity and loyalty? When he proposes to her, he says he can't be faithful, and she thinks about it. He says he's physiologically incapable of fidelity. And she thinks about it, and she says, can you be loyal? And he says, to you always. Well, what is the difference?
My favorite line in the movie is after they've been divorced, they've been separated, they've been apart, he's been in California, he comes back, and she says to him, why?
Yeah.
And he says, because I miss us. And Joseph Campbell once said, you know, that the commitment is to the relationship in a marriage. And he missed whatever they became together.
Diego and Frida, Frida and Diego, Diego and Frida. There's a whole feeling that these two became an item, even in the public eye, even in a social or celebrity circle. They were a unique couple. And I don't think that that's probably what he meant. But obviously she gave him something that he needed to be with.
His art is overtly political. Hers is very, very personal.
From the beginning of her painting, she was her own subject. And she just stayed on that. That's what she could paint. That's what she saw. She painted, as she said, her inner reality. She painted from inside.
It's all I know,
the
she
outside.
said. Yeah, she said, it's all I know.
It's all I know, that I paint my own reality. Yeah. She didn't even think she was a surrealist. That we call her, Breton called her a surrealist. But for her, that was reality. When you see her inside of her heart pumping blood, or you see her exposing even the miscarriage, some very dark and difficult paintings, and you see the fetus here, these items that are shocking for most people. That's the truth of her life.
Something else that struck Judith, my wife, and me as we watched, in that scene with Trotsky and his wife and their compatriots around the dinner table. I mean, we heard echoes of our own gatherings in the 1960s. So much passion for politics, so much commitment to a cause. I mean, did that have to do with Frida's time and place and those particular people?
Those people were actually so powerfully effective as artists politically. They did make a difference. Their work was political. It was fashioning the thinking of the time.
But what's happened to the passion for politics in this country today? Many people don't want to talk about politics, and if they do, they don't bring the passion. We don't bring the passion to it that we used to. What has happened?
Well, the commercialization of art is phenomenal, and that's for the movies as well. I mean, it's very, very hard for people to feel like their voice can be heard unless it's wide, it's on TV, and if you get to that point, then it has to be commercial, or people don't want to put it out there. So.
And you think this affects politics?
I think, well, politics itself, I think that people are just in a terrified state right now to be critical of anything. But I do think art still affects us socially in this country tremendously. What's on television, what's on HBO, the kind of movies. It does. A movie like this, as you said, people will go out and they'll discuss marriage. They'll discuss loyalty. That is an effective political, social act if you get people to think, if you can provoke them. I'm an entertainer, but I also firmly believe in provoking.
In almost everything I've seen of yours, there's a moment, a defining moment, usually a violent moment. You don't see the violence. That accident with the falling gold dust and the falling glass and the falling oranges, there's also that pipe there that we know later is going to enter her back and vagina and means that she never have children. But you don't see that act. No. You grope with the consequences of violence, not with the act itself.
Well, I learned from Shakespeare about that. I learned
Good
from
mentor.
Yes, I did. And I think that people's imaginations are richer sometimes than the reality. And also, if you show the reality, if you show the act, You have the danger of putting the audience off so they can't enter into it. We always write stories of tragedies because that's how we reach our human depth. That's how we get to the other side of us. We look at our cruelty, we look at the darkness and the horrific events that happen in our lives, whether it be a miscarriage in Frida's case or a husband who's not faithful, and then you find this ability to transcend. And that is called the passion, like the passion of Christ. You could call this the passion of Frida Kahlo in a way. When I talk about passion, and I'm not a religious person, but I absolutely am drawn and attracted to the power of religious art because it gets at that most extreme emotion of a human experience.
Excuse me, I have to tell you that I think you're one of the most religious people I see working in the
yes,
theater.
but not in organized religion.
No, not doctrinaire religion, but the experience.
No, I agree with you. I believe in it profoundly.
What I sense in you is a seeker. That's what I mean by religious, pilgrim, sojourner, whatever. You're a seeker.
And I'm often interested in the story of the outsider. And you know, I lived in Indonesia for many years, so
4
in
years.
Bali, yes.
What happened to you in Indonesia?
This is probably it for me. This is the story that moves me the most. I was there for 2 years, and I was planning to stay longer and start a theater company. And I went to Bali, to a remote village by a volcanic mountain, Batur, on the lake, and they were having a ceremony that only happens every 10 years for the young men. And I was sitting, I wanted to be alone for one. I was just listening to this music from all these different Balinese gamelans. And all of a sudden, out of the darkness, I could see glints of mirrors and 30 or 40 old men in full warrior costume, barrass costume. There was nobody in this village square. I was alone. They couldn't see me in the shadows. And they came out with these spears and they started to dance. And they did, I don't know, it felt like an eternity, but probably a half an hour dance with these voices coming out of them. And they danced to nobody. And I went, oh my God. The first men came out and they were performing for God. Now, God can mean whatever you want it to mean, but for me, I understood it so totally. The detail on the costumes. They didn't care if someone was paying tickets, writing reviews. They didn't care if an audience was watching. They did it from the inside to the outside, and from the outside to the in. And that profoundly moved me then.
How did you see the world differently after you were in Indonesia?
Well, I understood really the power of art to transform. I think transformation becomes the main word in my life, transformation. Because you don't want to just put a mirror in front of people and say, here, look at yourself. What do you see? You want to have a skewed mirror. You want a mirror that says, you didn't know you could see the back of your head. You didn't know that you could, almost cubistic, see all aspects at the same time. And what that does for human beings is it allows them to step out of their lives and to revisit it and maybe find something different about it. I think that's why travel was so important to me. I did it at a really young age because you go outside and then you look at your own country, your own culture completely differently. I remember back then I used to say that arts were talked about on the arts and leisure page. Now, why would it be arts and leisure? Why do we think that arts are leisure? Why isn't it arts and science or arts and the most important thing in your life? Yeah. And I think that art has become a big scarlet letter in our culture. It's a big A. And it says you are an elitist, you're an effete, or whatever those Agnew things many years ago, you know what I mean? It means you don't connect. And I don't believe that. I think we've patronized our audiences long enough. You can do things that will bring people to another place and still get to them on a very daily, mundane, moving level, that you don't have to separate art from the masses.
Well, thank you very much, Julií Taymorovou, for being with us tonight.
Thank you so much. The reason I chose Rodrigo Prieto as my DP wasn't only because he was Mexican, which was definitely a plus, but I could see the artist in him. And we talked a lot about trying to get the reality of the time and the subjectivity and the point of view of Frida.
So we started talking right away about how we were going to visualize the movie, what kind of sets we were going to build or not, or locations or sets, and that was where we started. After that, we started talking about more of the concept and how to photograph her life and how to interpret her view of life. Not only how it really was, but how her point of view, how to express that visually without it being too obvious.
something that is very important to me is camera movement. And I think it's tremendous that he is his own camera operator because there's a shorthand. I don't have to go through another person. So we had never worked together before, but we instantly, I'd be looking in the monitor and I'd see what he was done, and I wouldn't even have to say it. I would see the framing, I'd see him start to move and get a better framing. And I go, that's it. I wouldn't have to tell him. We were really in sync with each other. For instance, in a scene which is raucous, everybody's drunk, and Lupe, Diego's ex-wife, comes and says, "Why did you marry her?" This is after the wedding, and she tears at Frida's legs. It's handheld, and the camera's moving all over the place. He's a master at this. This DP can move and catch just the right thing. So there's a sloppiness there, because emotionally the sloppiness is right for the scene.
She's very, very articulate about what she wants, and you know right away what she likes and what she dislikes. Immediately, you can tell it in her tone of voice. Usually, she prefers muted colors, but in this case, on her trips to Mexico that she's done before, just the colorful buildings, the wardrobe, the people, everything's very, very colorful. So we did definitely go for that. We're going for that Mexican, vibrant, sunny feel.
Always with a tremendous consciousness of color, shape, dimensionality, and the lighting is extremely beautiful in this.
One thing, for example, Frida talks about in her diaries and her letters about the mystery of darkness and how she likes that. Although in her painting she doesn't use a lot of light and shadow. She doesn't do that. But she was very aware of it in her life. So I was trying to reproduce that, to have that mystery in most of interiors, to have dark areas where you don't really know what's there, but you see what you want to see. For example, after the accident, we went for a very bright white look, very bright, because she said in a letter to Alejandro, her boyfriend at that time, that suddenly life lost its mystery and everything became white, like ice, she mentioned. Very transparent, she could see everything, the mystery was gone. So we went for that. We went for white hospital wardrobe, very bright light, even bothersome a little. So we're taking cues from her life, from what she wrote about life. There's so many locations, so many different scenes happening in this movie. It gives us a chance to explore all sorts of different lighting situations. Today we're doing the visit of Trotsky and Diego and Frida in Breton to the pyramids. And so we're starting with them just walking down this Avenue of the Dead. And no, it's Breton and Frida are just chatting about the exposition he wants to do of her art. And then as they arrive to the pyramid, Trotsky and Frida are the ones who climb to the middle part of it, and they talk about their intimate love affair, and the rest stay down there. So it's interesting because instead of hiding, in a place and talking about it, they talk about this, like this open area. And we see the pyramids as the backdrop. It's also interesting because Frida used to call herself the pyramid of the moon, or the moon. She called herself the moon and Diego was the sun. So that's where we're shooting in the pyramid. And her affair with Trotsky, with the pyramid of the sun in the background.
That's a cut.
We're not actually going to New York or to Paris or to all these places. We wanted to do it almost metaphorically, all shooting here. And so we found great locations for that here in Mexico. But for example, Paris, we decided to go for a sort of pastel desaturated look, which we're doing in post-production. And she's writing letters and postcards to Diego. So the images are going to be sometimes frozen, like a postcard. We're telling the story of incredibly important visual artists of Mexico, of my country, that I've heard about since I was a very young kid, almost a baby. In a way, I'm also a visual artist. I use frame, I light, I composition. I hope that the audience doesn't notice the photography as they're looking at the movie. I hope they're into the story, that they're into what Frida's feeling, what Diego's feeling, and the photography will just be underlining all this. It's like the emphasis on what we want to express, what we want. Everything has to be believable. The audience has to believe, okay, that light is coming from a window, a lamp, whatever. But you always play with where that window is, where that lamp is, in relation to the characters, to make the light interesting and dramatic. So I hope people don't notice that. It's something that just should come into the eyes and just they feel it. And you know, maybe as they go out of the theater, they'll say, oh, okay, that was good cinematography. But I don't want them to think that as they're looking at the movie. I don't want to be too obvious. I just want it to be there, be strong, be dramatic, but only that.